Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, back with more Just Know HOA stories. In today's title story, my entitled neighbor dug a huge hole on my property to build an illegal pool. Here is what happened. I suppose you could say that one of the most important things a homeowner needs to consider when buying a house is security. Are you going to be safe in this house? Am I going to have to worry about criminal behavior right outside my home? We all worry about if my home is gonna be safe, or am I going to get back from work one day and find out that I've been robbed? Or maybe you need to go down the road to the shops to get milk and bread and you don't want to get halfway there and have someone jump out at you with a knife demanding your money. So for some of us, we have found safety in HOA areas. Their rules and regulations of properties have ensured us that our homes remain safe in a secure neighborhood where we can head to the local shop and not worry if we forget to lock the front door. I know that there will be some of you out there who have just rolled their eyes so hard I can hear them. Yeah, I get why. Sometimes the HOAs can feel constricting in what they allow their members to do to their houses, but generally that's only on the outside and restrictions are clearly laid out in the contract. I have always found them to be fair in what they expect, and if you don't like it, you can always look at another area and see if they can be more accommodating to your needs. Honestly, I enjoyed being an HOA member. I enjoyed the peace it brought and the sense of community it instilled in all of us. We were always doing street parties, community events, and helping each other out where needed. It was really nice to have that closeness come with the security and safety. The great thing about a HOA contract is how clear it can be on its bylaws. There are pages and pages of bylaws just on the types of trees you can plant. Hundreds more on regulating parking on the roads. It's crazy how much detail goes into them. There was something like 20 different bylaws about my property borderline. There was a diagram that measured out every edge, marked every angle and depth I could go to. Everything I had to do if I ever wanted to move the border, which involves years of court hearings and getting the right licenses, and God only knows what else there was. One thing I learned from it was that I was going to have to get used to the size of my garden, which was decent enough I could stick in a 5-foot deep, decent-sized pool if I wanted. Which was actually a comment I said to an HOA rep I was dealing with when I bought the house. This person turned out to be my neighbor, a fact that she loved bringing up at every opportunity. Her name was Karen. I said earlier that the great thing about being part of the HOA was the sense of community it brought. And sure, there were the odd recluses that kept to themselves and were rarely seen at gatherings, parties and events, but each to their own. We had a community center in the area, or rather it was more like a community village. Where the center was, which served as a nursery and family center, there was a sports field complete with bleachers. Sometimes the field would be painted to have a baseball diamond, and sometimes it would be a football field, depending on the season. Across the street from the community center was a small chapel, and around the corner from that was a few shops. Nothing special, a convenience store that was not really convenient, a burger place, a hairdresser, and a knick-knack shop. None of that was controlled by the HOA, but it was nice to have them so close to us, especially the sports field and community center. It really made it easier to run events, little feats, and stuff. The one thing I didn't enjoy about being part of the HOA was the constant meetings they held. It seemed like every other day Karen from next door was delivering a new flyer calling the HOA to meet up at the community center, normally at some inconvenient time like on a Saturday evening. It was never about anything drastically important, but God forbid you should fail to attend without prior notice and an amiable excuse. I'm not really painting the HOA in a good light right now, even after I mentioned how much I enjoyed being a member, but you gotta allow for some hyperbole. Dealing with Karen always seemed to put me on edge. She was the only person in the HOA I could not stand, and I rarely saw her, mainly because she was always off making someone's day a misery. So anyway, back on track, one evening I hear my letterbox go, and when I went to investigate, I had received the latest issue of one of Karen's flyers. She was calling for a general meeting on a Sunday afternoon of all times. I think the reason was because it was the only time slot the community center had availability. The subject of this week's meeting was to think tank what we could do to bring the community closer together. I know, important stuff, and there I was thinking the community was already close enough. I saw Karen once before the meeting was called. I think it was outside the store, and she immediately collared for me for some small talk. I hate small talk, they always feel so forced and false, just shotgunning out invasive questions about each other's private life. If you're not quick enough, you can get caught in the wake of the other person's questions, asking their questions back at them, making it look like you're just copying them and not really invested in the conversation. I pulled that out on Karen all the time and I don't think she noticed. I'm not really sure she cared either, just so long as she got to talk about herself, and what started out as being a question about her kids were doing at uni quickly turned into why smoking weed should come with a death sentence. Honestly, I have no idea how. The conversation did swing around to the meeting on Sunday, which is when she told me it was the only time they had available, but she also started talking about swimming pools and how great it would be if we had a community swimming pool. Obviously I agreed, and she seemed very excited that I did so. Poor naive past me, if only I could have a merest sense of the foreshadowing that was hiding in her gleeful eyes. I just thought she was excited to have a pool, and to be honest, I'd been thinking about a pool for myself, but not in the way this woman had in mind. I eventually wanted to get away from Karen to an endless flow of questions about if I was going to make it on Sunday, and just to get rid of her, I continually told her I was gonna be there. Right before the actual meeting, I remember thinking about where they could possibly build a swimming pool. All the land is sanctioned out to meticulous detail, there was literally nowhere for the pool to go. I figured that was what the meeting was gonna decide. Nope, the meeting was a complete waste of time as always. There was a brief mention of a pool, but Karen was vague about it and just said that things were going smoothly. The afternoon was wasted talking about nothing, but on the upside we are going to have a massive community garage sale. Over the next few days, Karen started to build up hype for the community pool. Saying that the blueprints were at the city planners waiting to get permission to begin building, she had gotten a few of the best construction crews to give her a quote. I must admit, I was kind of excited too. I did think it was odd when I looked out my bedroom window one afternoon and saw Karen standing in her garden with a guy in a high-vis vest paying particular attention to a clipboard. If I had been a little more tentative and showed any interest in Karen's life, I might have gone down and played the part of the nosy neighbor properly. Find out what plans she had for her garden. If I had, then I wouldn't have had much of a story to share though. I would have stopped her there and then and things would have probably been fine. However, I didn't. I think it was several months later during the holiday season, as I was taking the kids off to Disneyland for a few days to do a bit of roadside tourism on the way there and back again, that I found out what the guy in the high-vis was really doing and what Karen truly had planned. The trip was a great success, everyone loved the stupid tourist traps we discovered, got some great pictures of a hole in the ground. We spent a few nights in Disneyland, saw the parade and everything, and we came home in good spirits and ready to finish out the holidays in style. I got us back from the holidays sometime around mid-afternoon. There was not much to see on the way home. There was a diner where all the waitresses were wearing heelys, and that was about it. Nothing could have prepared us for the spectacle we would see when we got home though. I did not realize at first. I pulled into our road like it was any other day. I saw the skipper outside Karen's house and some obvious signs of construction, and all I thought at the time was, oh, I guess that's what Karen the high-vis man were doing. Maybe she's getting a pool installed after all. And yep, she was getting a pool installed alright, and there I was thinking she had stolen my idea, and now I'm going to look like I'm trying to keep up with the Jonies. Tired as we were from the journey home, I did not care to look in on what Karen was doing and just wanted to get a nap. I dumped the bags in the hall, went upstairs and laid down on my bed and let sleep wash over me. I don't think I got 5 minutes into my nap when I hear the kids calling me to look out the backyard. I could hear the excavator aka digger going, but it's been making the same melodic drone it had been doing since we got home, so I didn't think that Karen had smashed in our fence by mistake. When I went to look out the window, I was reminded of the great picture we took of a hole. That hole was staring back at me now, and this time there was an excavator in it still digging it out. The hole was not just in my garden either, it stretched out to Karen's garden too. She was digging an Olympic-sized swimming pool across our 2 property gardens. I ran out to my garden shouting my head off, fuming and frothing at the mouth. The construction worker was so stunned to see me charging out of my house like a bull seeing red. He started shouting back at me once he composed himself, telling me that he had permission to dig the pool. There had been plans issued by the council and everything, so there was nothing to be angry about. He actually said that, and he then mentioned that he was just trying to do his job, and I realized that now, and I realized that at the time. I apologized to him and asked him who had authorized this, and he tells me Karen and the HOA did. I was dumbstruck. I had to wait for Karen to get home from work, so for the first time ever, I sat on my porch and waited for Karen to get home. In the meantime, I had chance to cool off and think about this properly. I had insurance and I'm pretty sure I could get the HOA to cover the costs of repairing the damage one of their senior members had caused in the first place. However, when Karen got home, I asked her to explain herself. I was calmer now, so I didn't charge at her like I had charged at the poor construction worker. I tried to get him to stop digging the hole, but that was an argument I didn't want to have, so he was out there still shoveling out the dirt. Karen looked at me with a bright beaming smile, pleased to see me home safe, and tried to kickstart the small talk with questions about how I had enjoyed my vacation. I pretended to play along for all of half a question before I started demanding for her to explain herself. She looked at me like a wounded puppy but recovered pretty quickly. Remember, she is a Karen and started trying to defend herself, making out like she was the victim in all of this. She was adamant that I had agreed to the construction of the public pool. I could not believe what I was hearing. She planned on building a public pool out of our back garden. How would it even work? Where would the changing rooms go and the showers? Did she really think anyone would be okay with giving up their entire back garden over to a public pool for strangers to traipse about in? The whole idea was insane and I told her as much. Do you want to know what she said when I pretty much called her insane? She said, well, the HOA owns your property, so there's not much you can do about it now. I swear, if my mother had not raised me right, I would have been severely tempted to punch her in her smug little face when she said that, or at the very least just slap her. Fortunately for me, I had the bylaws on my side and the fact that the HOA sold me the property, complete with front and back garden, as well as a little side entrance into the garden. In the meantime, I figured the police could deal with Karen and the head of the HOA for my area. She lived a couple of blocks away and got to my house pretty quickly. It took a while longer for the cops to show up, but the head of the HOA had everything under control long before they arrived. She got the construction worker to stop digging and hold off any more construction work until the whole mess had been cleared up. It did not take long. I think Karen must have gotten to the point where I said a public pool was a great idea before she lost her cool with Karen and chewed her out right in front of me. Karen was looking pretty upset now, and when the police came by, she was looking very worried. Once they were caught up on what was going on, I think they wished they had a mass pile-up to deal with, anything to get themselves away from this HOA mess. I was only hoping the police would come to stop the construction work, but he went home ages ago and the police just ended up taking our statements. They informed me that they would be looking into this. I asked them if they wanted a copy of the HOA bylaws, like dope, to which they told me that they had their own copy. A couple days went past and a couple days where I would get no peace from Karen, who seemed to knock on my door every hour, asking me about the pool and what she could do to get me to change my mind, but there was nothing. I still thought the whole idea was insane. She tried bribing me with home-baked brownies, threatening me with getting me kicked out of the HOA, and all sorts of things. I think I was right on the edge of calling the police again when they ended up actually calling me. They asked me a couple more questions about the incident and about my verbal contract with Karen, and then asked me if I wanted to press charges on Karen. There was no doubt in my mind I was done with Karen and her harassment, so I said yes. We met up in public court where the judge heard us both out and made the decision. It was not a hard decision to make and the whole process did not last more than 10 minutes, but the end result was so satisfying. Karen ended up having to pay for the damages and repairs to my garden, and on top of that she had to do community service, which I fought so hard not to burst out laughing when I heard it. I thought it was such bitter irony that this woman who was so concerned with the community would now be spending the next year or so cleaning it up in an orange jumpsuit. She was also kicked out of the HOA, banned for life, and had to move out of the neighborhood. Which honestly was the cherry on the cake, because now she is cleaning up a community she is no longer part of. By the way, if you're wondering, the damages Karen had to pay me pretty much bankrupted her, so I doubt she'll ever be able to live in such a nice neighborhood again. Karma bit her in the rear big time. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm happy to hear that there was some kind of justice in the end, and I hope that Karen will never be able to terrorize a neighborhood again in her life. Honestly, how entitled do you have to be to think that it is a good idea to dig a huge hole on someone else's property and then even get away with it? Absolutely crazy. Also, I don't know why, but it seems like post-pandemic people got even more entitled than usual. We have definitely seen an increase in entitled crazy behavior, not gonna lie. The next one is titled, I guess I'll do what you say. I went to a nice Caribbean island with most of my family. My uncle and his wife saw this trip as a second honeymoon and got wasted since day one, which would be okay if they had not brought their 8-year-old son with them. The second day of the trip, my little cousin goes straight to the deepest side of the pool with the full intention of jumping, and mind you, he does not know how to swim and did not have floaties. Noticing his parents were too busy chugging free mojitos, I grabbed him by the arm before he jumped and started telling him it is dangerous to do that, and he should remain in the kids' pool. He starts crying and his mother goes berserk, yelling to me that I have no right to scold or touch her kid, and to stay away from him for the rest of the trip, or else she won't hesitate to slap me for abusing her kid. I obliged, and on day 3, when we were about to leave the hotel, the kid came running past me and knocked over what seemed to be 2 fancy statues placed on a coffee table at the hotel's reception, and of course everyone noticed and they had to pay for the damage. Later that night, he also broke a plate on a restaurant. He was sitting beside me, but you know, I got strict orders not to interfere. The next one is titled, Revenge on the Postal Office. UPS smashed a nearly new MacBook that I sent with them. I asked them nicely to pay me back for it, and they asked about blaming me, blaming my packaging, saying it was impossible that they damaged it, etc. I was able to prove my packaging was flawless and get a statement from the Apple shop that I took it to say it was damage caused by being dropped or thrown. I could also prove it worked when I sent it. They were not too interested and messed me about for weeks, sending me from pillar to post, even threatening to make me pay interest on custom charges, which I was not liable for as the laptop was smashed on arrival and thus worthless at import. I took it to small claims. They hired a lawyer who sent me letters saying they contested it and would go for full fees, etc. if I lost it. I went for it anyway. I did law stuff in university, so I knew the basics and I thought my case was pretty clear-cut. So, I won. I won my costs back plus extra plus interest. They ignored the court order and did not pay. Now, this laptop was originally being sent to my beloved mother-in-law. She asked me to help her with the problem as apps were also seriously harassing her for the customs fee. However, very unexpectedly, before I could resolve it, she passed away. It was the last thing she ever asked me to do for her, and I loved that woman more than pretty much any human on this planet. She was my mother, my best friend and my mentor. Taking down UPS was now my personal vendetta. I researched my options. I could have taken the usual, more conservative legal routes to reclaim my money, but no, F them. I don't care about the money anymore. I want revenge, I want drama, I want karmic justice. I went to the High Court. I got rid of control. I of course added on more fees and more interest. I then hired the most aggressive bailiff firm in London. I trusted that the crappy processes and attitude of UPS to mean that they would ignore the letters and actually get a visit. And they did. The bailiffs rock up at UPS headquarters and explain the situation. UPS refuses to pay, so the bailiffs start listing goods. Security try to make them leave. The office manager tries to bully them out. Obviously, no craps are given by the bailiffs and they crack on with their jobs. I was not allowed the body cam footage, but they did send me a detailed report. The final conclusion is copied from it below. Calls were then made to the accounts manager, who arrived in a hurry. As no payment was forthcoming from them, the agent again explained the removal process and costs involved and called the office for approval to begin removals. The agent began to seize assets. The finance director then arrived on the scene. He was not at all happy about the attendance, but ultimately agreed to pay a voluntary payment in full from his personal account in order to stop the removal. I know it is a drop in the ocean to UPS, but I got more than double what I originally asked for to replace the laptops. They would have had to pay even more on top in fees to the bailiffs. I reckon it cost them at least 3 times more than the original claim in the end. But mostly, I just enjoy the mental image of the flustered finance director and his impotent rage having to pay his own money to stop the heavies taking desktop computers and fancy pot plants and things out of their swanky head office lobby. And yeah, guys, I would have never thought that we ever see a story about someone getting revenge on UPS. It kind of reminds me of the times when you order something on Amazon, they send you the wrong thing, then you ask them if you should return it and they just say, never mind, you can just keep it, it's not worth the trouble. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.